So, Kim, this is your time to air your grievances with Brian about the 93 season, if you'd like.
No, I'm okay. That was slightly before my time.
She just called you
She
old.
just called me old. She did.
This is the best podcast episode ever. Welcome, everybody, to episode 1106 of Beyond the Exchange with me, your host, Jeremy Smith, co-founder and CEO of Pegasix, and Brian King, co-founder and CEO of Lodas Markets and creator of Beyond the Exchange. And I was saying everything with an overly dramatic voice, but I think our audience is going to like it. Like and subscribe if you do.
Well, we're super excited to have Kim Flynn joining us. She joins us as the president of XA Investments, and we are so excited to have you joining us today. Thanks for being here, Kim.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be with you guys.
Awesome. So before we jump into telling us everything about XA Investments, I did as much research as LinkedIn would allow me to do, and a little bit of ChatGPT. Check out to our sponsors. But I did learn that, so first of all, you are a Notre Dame grad, yes?
Yes.
And you also Harvard MBA?
Yes.
And one of my favorite things that I did not realize until very recently is that you are on the board of the Chicago Symphony. Is that correct?
I am. I'm actually co-hosting the annual gala this year, which is probably not on ChatGPT just yet, but that's in September. Wow. So yeah.
Holy cow. You are officially the fanciest guest we have ever had on Beyond the Exchange. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm just a failed violinist. I know how hard it is to play, and I admired it all the more in terms of the amazing, musicians at the CSO. It's impressive, and my daughter has played violin and cello slightly better than I did, but also not at the CSO level. So,
how did you get affiliated with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra?
I've always been mentored by wonderful people in my career at Morgan Stanley and Nuveen, and we had a shared interest in classical music. So my first job was investment banking at Morgan Stanley, and one of the projects that I was put on was a project to help. This was in the, everybody was creating a website. So the CSO at that time in 1998, 1999, I don't think they had like much of a web presence. So that was Bill Strong, who served on the board at the CSO. And I got involved at a very early point. And then later, when I spent 12 years at Nuveen Investments, my boss, Bill Adams, was also the treasurer and served on the board. And, the benefit is you get free tickets. And so I was always, as a younger person, reaping the benefits of their affiliation with the CSO. And so, becoming president at my firm, and I wanted to share that gift. And the CSO does a lot for the Chicago Public Schools and in terms of music education. And so I wanted to get involved. And a few years ago, I decided to join the Women's Board. And
does, given sort of your background in symphonies and all of that, does the X in XA stand for xylophone?
The X, and it's actually an interesting story, but I'll tell the short version, which is the X stands for X Morgan Stanley. So my parent company is XMS Capital because they were all former Morgan Stanley people in Chicago.
Oh, that's funny.
And that's how we knew each other. A lot of Notre Dame people joined the Chicago Morgan Stanley office. And when they decided to start their own investment bank 20 years ago, they just became known as the XMS guys. But when we started our asset management business, I knew that would not go over well inside of Morgan Stanley, which is one of the largest, obviously, wirehouse distribution platforms. So we went with XAI, and the A being for alternatives, but no xylophone reference.
Gotcha. So what's the I for?
So the
investments.
Investment. You got it. XAI.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I pick up on things. A lot of people say I'm dumb.
Most people don't figure it out. So, and XAI is the abbreviation, but it's also an AI business that Elon Musk runs. So we've got alternative
Right,
names
that's
for our
true.
business, at some point when he comes calling. So
I've actually had just real quick back to the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I've had several friends that have played there, and like the principal trumpet player, I don't know if anybody is active there now, but Gene Picorni is the tuba player. I did a master class with him back
Wow.
in the day. So yeah, you may not know unless you are a committed listener to our podcast. You may not know that I was a aspiring orchestra person myself in college, but tuba player, and then I switched majors to vocal performance, and so I was a singer. So both.
Well, two things. One, Nathan, in post, can you put a nerd alert, a band nerd alert warning up before we get into
No,
this?
we're talking orchestra, so it's not as nerdy. It's not as nerdy.
Slightly less.
It's more highbrow. Think highbrow. not nerd.
Gotcha. Secondly, Brian is actually not doing himself justice. He wasn't just a tuba player in college. He was literally the number one tuba player in the country coming out of high school. Got recruited by Florida State to do it.
Is that right?
True story.
It was quite the banner to be worn, for sure. That's how I got my first job in finance. But no, I love that. I love that connection, and that's really awesome that you're going to be able to host that gala later this year. That's going to be an amazing event, I'm sure.
It is. I don't do that many party planning sessions, but it's a big one. It's a 500 person gala at the Four Seasons here in Chicago, and we have a new conductor coming to the CSO. So everybody's in great anticipation of Klaus Michaela, who won't be in Chicago. Actually, he is performing in April. So a lot of excitement, sort of build up to the new conductor.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And can I make a suggestion, if I may, since you are sort of putting on this gala? Something to think about for the food is to do, I don't really have a name for it, but it's like fancy basic food or fancy kids food. So you do like grilled cheese, except it's like melted Bourgeon cheese on, sourdough bread or something like that. And you do peanut butter and jelly, but it's with, really fancy peanut butter and jelly and, all those sorts of things. So it's like basic food, but fancied up.
Like
Just
that.
something.
Yeah, I'm actually celiac, so we have to direct the menu. And I feel like the more basic, probably the better received by everybody. We'll just do grapes and goldfish with grilled cheese.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. I'm telling you.
My younger daughter is celiac, so we have lived the celiac life for 15 years.
Yeah. And I have to say, I'm not a big fan of gluten-free. It's safe to say that I can't eat it. But Brian's wife makes a lot of times people who have celiacs or people who don't but eat gluten-free, they're like, oh no, this tastes just like a real cookie or pizza or whatever. And it never does. It's always terrible. Always terrible, people. But his wife makes these the gluten-free cookies that are so good that when she would bring them into the office, I would eat half of the cookie tin. It was so good.
I'd like that recipe. Yeah, there's only like 3 million celiacs, but there's 18 million people that have to be gluten-free. So that's why everybody now it's popular to be gluten-free. But
yeah, I was about to say have to be is a strong word. The 3 million people, yes. The other 15 million, I'm not sure if they have to be.
On your thing about talking about fancy played down or simple foods. So I was at a conference last week. First of all, Kim, if you've never had an opportunity to go to Future Proof is a brand new concept. It is probably my favorite type of conference. It's all outdoors. It's amazing. People are, it's casual wear. It's literally directly on the beach. It's fantastic. So you have to go. But they have all these food trucks that come up. And there was one of the food trucks in particular that their specialite was grilled cheese. But fancy grilled cheese.
So I'm talking
So
about.
they had super fancy cheeses. I'm going to mispronounce this, I know, but a Gruyere cheese with a fig preserve on it, on a sourdough bread.
Yeah.
It was one of the most unbelievable things I've ever eaten.
Yeah,
It was so good.
This is what I'm saying.
I've heard good things about the conference. A client of mine from Brown Brothers Harriman was just in Chicago yesterday, and he was like, "You have to go." He was like, "I had 16 amazing meetings," and he was like, "When do you ever get 16 amazing meetings at a conference?" And I said, "Well," he said it was on the beach, and I said, "Well, do you wear flip flops?" And he said, "Yeah, I actually packed my flip flops," and I was like, "That's impressive." I don't even think my husband owns flip flops, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was not so brave as to wear flip-flops at the conference, but I did like wear, short sleeve outdoorsy shirt, camp shirt. And but it's an amazing event. But those in-person meetings, it's like they set up these speed dating meetings and they use an algorithm to match people and you can accept into them.
Oh,
yep,
wow.
Yep. So you say, what type of people do you want to meet with?
Right.
And it's a really large conference. I think this was the first one in Miami, and there was like 2,500 people there. But I went to the first one for me. I spoke at the one in California last September, I think. There's like over 5,000 people there. It's a pretty amazing event. It's all on the beach.
Holy cow! But next time, bring flip flops, but keep your socks on. That's how you draw attention. It's called guerrilla marketing.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. A lot of the kids these days wear socks and
Crocs,
slides. They're slides. Yeah. But like all the athletes, they put their slides on after a game.
My daughter does that.
But so tell me a little bit about XA Investments for the audience.
Well, we have two parts to our business. So we're an asset manager, but traditionally, like an asset manager, we have funds, we sell them to people. I don't think that's the most interesting part of our business, but the most interesting thing that we do and what impacts sort of a larger audience is we do a lot of education and research on the interval marketplace, which is hot right now. And we also, with that knowledge that we have around registered closed-end funds, these are all 1940 Act products. They've got shareholder protections built into them, but they're different than a mutual fund. They're different than an ETF. So we get calls from big traditional mutual fund shops. They don't have someone like me or the 10-person team that I have that knows how to build these types of products for private market strategies. So it's the application of that product structuring knowledge and the marketplace knowledge that we bring to our clients. So we also can help a firm that doesn't have any mutual funds. If you're a GP that manages private equity or venture capital, you don't know the first thing about an SEC registered product, and you don't know what kind of people you need to hire. And so we're there to help them in that process. Some people hire us just to, on the front end, kind of like a kick the tires, where we actually help them put a plan to go to market. Some will say, hey, just do it all for me. And we outsource, they basically hire us to do that on an outsourced basis. So it's a lot of fun because everybody just comes to us with their problems.
That's awesome. Now, is there a conflict between being a fund sponsor and helping sponsors, and how do you get around that? Like, how do you address that?
We have 3 registered closed-end funds. 2 of them are listed closed-end funds. And so it's a kind of a different animal than an interval fund. So that helps us avoid some conflicts. I really love the listed closed-end fund structure. I spent 12 of my formidable years in product development at Nuveen building. I built with a team of people that were expert in that, 45 funds in the 12 years we were there. The reality is a lot of people don't really care about that part of the market. And so it kind of avoids some of those conflicts that you might happen to think, or you might worry that are there. We do have an interval fund. And so that interval fund specializes in an area of the market in private credit called CLO debt. And so we always flag that for people who might want to work with us. And the funny thing about it is, because we have that asset class knowledge and there's some challenges with that asset class, we've actually, tried to get people not to hire us, but they want to anyways, because we know a lot of the asset class specific and tax issues that come up with that product. And so I think the experience that we have managing our own funds is what we bring to bear in that consulting and the research that work that we do, but we're always direct with people and let them know.
Important question, probably the most important question. What's the story behind the typewriter there in the background?
I love Tom Hanks, and remember in COVID, and Tom Hanks, I guess even before COVID, every movie set he goes on, he takes a Smith Corona typewriter. I think Tom Hanks has like a big collection of different typewriters, but he takes one on set with him. I think probably as a break from boredom, or maybe it's part of his acting process. So I was out in Utah for most of the lockdown under COVID. So I went on to Etsy and I found a really beautiful Smith Corona. So I was mostly typing recipe cards, and during, I made a lot of dips, which is not really cooking. I mean, Brian's wife would probably tell me no, but anyways, I made a lot of dips because if you serve people a lot of dip and drinks, then they don't need to eat dinner. So that's a lesson learned. Now it sits there. My mother is an antique dealer, so I have all sorts of I have lots of collectibles. This is when I am giving friends advice about when to leave their job, I show them the red arrow. So yeah, I have a lot of collectibles here.
That's awesome.
You know what's so interesting? So you were saying you'll type thank you notes on your typewriter because it gives it probably like that personal touch.
A little wow. Yeah. Not expected. Right.
Yeah. Because it's interesting because one of the things when the typewriter first came about or started to become popularized, it was seen as incredibly impersonal and almost rude if you sent somebody a typed note, because at that point it was all handwritten. And all of a sudden you send this machine generated thing and it's like, well, I don't mean anything to you. You can't handwrite it. But because now it's antiquity, right? The typewriter, then it's like a special touch. If you do something on a typewriter, it's like, oh my gosh, like how unique and intimate. So it's funny how it's kind of flipped.
Yes, our perspective changes, but we all get so much junk mail. Nobody gets a personalized note in the mail anymore. So
no, it's true.
That's actually a great point. I think there's a lot of people that will intentionally send mail these days because nobody actually gets mail that they want to see. But it's like, I could send you an email, you might skim it or you don't want to see it. But if I actually want you to read something, I'm going to send you a letter.
And I level it up. I go visit them at their home personally, knock on the door to door. That's an art that's long gone. They are not expecting it. Trust me. When I knock on their door at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday, they are shocked.
I do like the fact that you said you made a lot of dips. And as you were saying that, it reminded me of, have you watched the show Only Murders in the Building? So Martin Short's character in that show, like that's almost all he eats are these different dips.
That's right.
And he's eating them and I'm going, oh my God, I could really use a dip right now. Like how amazing are dips? And you've got the holy grail of dip recipes, it sounds like.
Well,
Kim, what's your favorite one that you make?
I do a pimento cheddar cheese dip.
You lost me.
And we go to restaurants, and if they serve a good dip, we'll replicate it at home. This one you serve with sliced dill pickle and Ritz crackers, not for the gluten-free eaters, unfortunately. Yeah, the pimento cheese one, that one's super easy and people love it. And then I have a white bean dip with rosemary. For, anybody that's doing keto, that's a good one.
Gotcha. What's the most difficult dip to make?
Difficult dip? Well, I don't know. To get right, I think it's actually hard to get an artichoke dip right. I made some really bad artichoke dip. I finally made a good one, and the key was fresh garlic. There you go. And I had to wilt the spinach, which is not.
See, I told you, Brian. That's how you make good artichoke dip. Wilted spinach. He didn't believe me. He's like, you're full of it. Honestly. And here we go. Thank you. So wait, one more. How many different dips do you think you know how to make?
I only make about 5.
Oh, well, that's still a lot.
Dips.
I like to have the ingredients on hand because you never know when you need like wine dinner, which, you need a dip for wine dinner. So.
Right. Do you drink wine spontaneously a lot?
Well, not at work, but at home.
If you would have reached under your desk and pulled
That was
out a
exactly what
nice bottle of Chianti, that'd have been amazing.
We have a good friend that was he worked in marketing at Behringer. So you get on the friends and family list at one of the wineries, and you get 92-point wines for like $30 a bottle. It's the way to go.
Brian has a drinking problem, so that'd be perfect for you.
Jeremy doesn't drink at all. He is a connoisseur of lemonade.
Yes.
That's his drink of choice, and hot chocolate.
It's true. Yeah. Whenever I go to a restaurant, much to the mortification of anyone I'm with, I will ask what sort of flavored lemonades you have. Usually it's either none or just lemonade, sir. But every once in a while, they'll be like, we have a raspberry or blueberry, strawberry. And my eyes light up like I don't know, someone who loves flavored lemonades and the restaurant has them.
I was going to say schoolgirl.
Yeah. I live like a schoolgirl. I do. I get all giddy.
Go to Cheesecake. They've got nice flavored lemonades at Cheesecake Factory.
Really?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I
A trip
did not
back
know
to
that.
the 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, that is good. And you know who else has surprisingly good lemonades? Wendy's.
Wendy's
Dude.
Has like 3 different lemonades and they kind of mix the flavor, rotate them. So good. So good.
Speaking of cheesecake, my celiac daughter's favorite restaurant to eat. There's like one thing
Oh,
on the
that's
menu
right.
that's gluten-free, and it's like a triple cheese pasta or something like that. It's like one of her favorite things to eat. And then the dessert is they have Godiva chocolate flourless cake.
I know it. I was there yesterday, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
It's her favorite restaurant. I'm like, do we have to go to Cheesecake?
Yeah, the
Factory?
same. My daughter's too.
We could go to Uncle Julio's. No, she likes the cheesecake. So yeah,
That's
she
funny.
knows Cheesecake had, but I do.
Okay.
I am acquainted with their gluten-free menu. So
And Brian, I hope that you always refer to Sydney as your celiac daughter. Like even when you introduce her to be, hi, this is my celiac daughter, Sydney. That would be great. I hope that's what you do.
That's how I typically do. Yeah. So you have 2 kids,
I
right?
do. I have a son and a daughter, and they both
How
say
old?
they don't have celiac. I have a 17. I have a junior in high school, and I have a freshman in high school, and they're Teddy and Rose. And
Wait, is there any connection to Teddy Roosevelt or no?
yeah, we do. My son doesn't like me to talk about it, but yeah, I mean, my
Please
husband
do.
admires Teddy Roosevelt, and so like in his nursery, and the decor hasn't really changed, even though it's been a fast 17 years. But we do have these framed photos of Teddy Roosevelt on horseback.
Really?
One just with how he has the one
Yeah. The monocle?
Like the monocle, yeah.
monocle. Yeah. So we do have that. So Teddy, my son's an Edward, which Ted Kennedy was an Edward, which is not that common, but that's a
No.
family name. Theodore was not a family name, so we went, but he is named in part after Theodore Roosevelt. So
Gotcha.
And then
That's-
Rose.
and then
For Roosevelt.
Rose got the middle name because she was supposed to be Charlotte, named after my grandmother, who I was very close with, but my sister took the name. She did ask permission, but she
I
took
was about to say.
yeah.
Okay.
And so
All right.
so my sister and I are very close, but her daughter is definitely a Charlotte and mine's definitely a Rose. But so yes, so we couldn't figure out another name, so she became Rose. So
Well, that's good. So I have 2 presidential stories. One is my dog, Australian Shepherd, is named Teddy after Teddy Roosevelt. So similarly, yeah.
yeah.
And then when my wife, now ex-wife, when she was first pregnant, we knew that if it was a girl, we were going to name her Reagan. Like we always wanted a Reagan. Having nothing to do with the president, we just liked the name. And so when she was first pregnant, we weren't going to find out whether it was a boy or girl until she delivered. And so we couldn't think of a boy's name. Finally, we came down to 2 names we liked, to Carter and Colin. And then, one day, it was probably a month or 2 before she was going to deliver, I said, wait a second. I said, Jenny, it has to be Colin. We have to name our kid Colin, because if our first child is a boy, turns out to be a boy, and we name him Carter, we know we're going to at least have 2 kids. And if the second one's a girl, we've always wanted to name her Reagan. So we're going to have a Carter and a Reagan. Like, even though neither would have been named after the president, that would look ridiculous and no one would believe us. So that's why Colin is named Colin, who's 15, and Reagan, who's 13. So similar to yours, but just offset by a couple of years.
That's very good. Okay, I have to one up you though. So
please do.
My sister named her son Lincoln because we are distant relatives of Abraham Lincoln. I'm the 16th cousin? We have the Daughters of the American Revolution traced back the roots. So she named her son Lincoln, and she named Lincoln's dog Penny. Isn't that cute?
It is.
Penny's
That's
not
awesome.
great.
I like that.
The Lincoln was good.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, that definitely one up me. I'm the relative of no one. I mean, of any importance. That is great. I love that. So do you guys, like, as a Lincoln lineage, are there any like events, like family reunion is probably too far a stretch to call it that, but like where like the descendants of Lincoln get together or anything like that?
Oh, I've been telling my family's from Oklahoma, so I've been telling my sister she needs to bring her son up because, like in Chicago, there's a hotel where the whole side of the hotel has Lincoln's. It's like an 8-story hotel, has Lincoln's head, and there's a lot of But no, I don't think there's like a big family reunion for that. Not that
And
I
no Civil War reenactments or anything along. It is funny though, because Jeremy, though he did want to avoid his kids both being named after presidents, he probably has more history knowledge about presidents than almost anybody else I know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that I was avoiding that, but I know a lot about every president, but I know, like, I'm passionate about everything pretty much pre-World War I. Once you get to World War I, for some reason, I lose interest in American history. I still know a lot about the presidents from that point on, but in terms of American history, I don't know why. I guess maybe it feels like modernity at that point, versus like history. And so it's not as intriguing to me.
I like the way you worked the word modernity in there. That's well played. Well played. He set up this whole line of conversation just so he could put that in there.
Actually, there was a betting pool if I would use it. I just won $2,000 because I was able to say modernity.
I think that should be a bit that we do for the next several podcasts. Just what words can we fit in there? And we're going to start with you, Kim. We're going to say, what word in our next podcast should we try to fit in there?
I like that.
Banana. You gotta work banana and natural.
All right, natural.
Yeah.
All right, Nathan, can you write that down? I don't know if Nathan's busy or not because he's behind me, so I can't see. But banana it is. I like that.
It's a Minions reference. Your children have probably seen Minions plenty of times. They would get it.
Yeah, I try not to get too involved in my children's lives, so I haven't seen Minions, even though they have many times.
My kids are in college and yet have probably watched that more than 5 times.
Including your celiac daughter, Sydney?
My celiac daughter, yes. And my non-celiac.
Wow.
Yeah, Minions came out when my daughter was 2, and that because we were at a Notre Dame football game, and she, instead of yelling out like "Go Irish" or whatnot, she yelled out "banana" at 2. But she the timing was perfect when she yelled "banana," and it was like in the spirit of the moment. So
that's great.
Yeah, we like that for her.
I will say that speaking of Notre Dame football, Notre Dame was always like my second favorite team growing up because I went to Florida State. I was a diehard Florida State fan, but I always loved like the history, the tradition of Notre Dame football. But so loved going to the campus. I've never been to a game there, but someday.
Were you also a Dallas Cowboys and New York Yankees fan?
No, I was not.
Okay,
I was not.
Just checking. Sorry, Kim, you were saying.
America's teams,
Yeah,
this is true.
You can come with me anytime, Brian. Let me know.
Oh, there we go. I got an invite.
Do you go to games frequently?
Yeah, we pretty much go to all the games, even
Whoa.
away games. We went to the Texas
What?
A&M opener down in College Station, and it was like 100 degrees. And I said to my husband, I was like, it's Houston, I mean, adjacent. And they were actually very welcoming and very lovely. But we sat at the top of Kyle Field, and it's a really big stadium, and it's got a lot of vertical. So we went to the top, we went to our seats, and I'm a little scared of heights. So I said to my husband, I said, I'm not leaving. I'm not getting drinks. I'm not going to the bathroom. And I like clung to the railing behind us because it was like, it would be your
It was
death.
like straight up and down.
It was
It was kind of like the
horrible.
Colosseum in Rome. It was just like up and down.
It was even further than that. Yeah, it was crazy. But
That was at Texas A&M, you said?
that was down. Yeah, and the Aggies were very welcoming. And we went to the national championship down in Atlanta, and that ended poorly. But they made it there, and the college playoffs were a ton of fun, and so much better than in. I think that was hopefully it says a lot to be able to make it through what is sort of a gauntlet toward the end of it's fun. It was fun.
That's true. Yeah. Unfortunately, now I'm not a fan, but all of my friends and family are because I'm from Cleveland. So everybody's an Ohio State fan.
Yeah.
So if you want me to say something mean to them, just say it here and I'll pass it on.
No, I mean, it's hard to say anything mean. They are an amazing team, and they had some amazing athletes, and they just had us beat. I think we weren't as strong as we had shown up in prior games, but nonetheless, like you can't, you got to give them credit. So
yeah,
it was a good game.
You know what's amazing about Notre Dame, or not specifically about Notre Dame, but that Lou Holtz, who's like the pantheon of Notre Dame coaches. I think he won one national championship, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so weird that
but he's so beloved because he was almost like, it was interesting because he had sort of his public persona, and that's what you see on TV today. And so he's like very much beloved, and he would talk at mass, I mean, like, so but then
he's part of the community.
Yeah, and then in the locker room, he was a totally different guy, and he would a lot of expletives, and so it's funny because he was very motivating to the players, and that worked, I guess, in the 80s. Probably wouldn't work so much now, but yeah, as the university loved the guy, I think the part of the reason why he's so beloved is that we kind of had a bunch of duds following him, in terms of likability.
Yeah.
Brian Kelly was a great coach, is a great coach, but I don't know that people really liked him very much. And so now with Marcus Freeman, you have somebody who's like a great person, a great father, a great coach, a likable guy. That's a pressure cooker too.
He's a player's coach for sure. Like you see the way those kids respond to him. Like, so growing up in the 80s and 90s, the coach for Florida State was Bobby Bowden, and so very similar, like super beloved among so many people. But really loved to take on the role of almost like a father figure to the to a lot of the kids who in some cases didn't have a father figure in their life, and so I always thought that was great. But speaking of Florida State,
did they win 2 under him?
They did 93 and 99, which were the years that surrounded my time at Florida State. I was 94 to 98. So that was unfortunate timing. We were still good during that time, but it was very, very different. Yeah. But I will say the 93 national championship, you asked, like, shouldn't they have, they only won one national championship. 93, Notre Dame had an undefeated season. They beat Florida State in 93, but Florida State went on to get the title game and got to win the national championship.
Oh, wow.
So it was a really, like, Notre Dame was pretty upset with us.
Oh, yeah, I'll bet. So Kim, this is your time to air your grievances with Brian about the 93 season, if you'd like.
No, I'm okay. That was slightly before my time. But
she just called you old.
She just called me old. She did.
This is the best podcast episode ever.
Well, this has been awesome, Kim. I really appreciate you joining us. It's great to be able to learn a little bit more about you, learn more about XAI, and again, always love having people join us, but especially people with the background that you have. And so thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian. And good to meet you, Jeremy.
Likewise.